before we start the video, a large thank you to Darksaid and He for their support on Patreon. I hope you guys enjoy the video. And a massive thank you to Halo Burner, Ryan Belland, and Andy Penn for their massive support of the channel this month on Patreon. It is greatly appreciated, gentlemen. I hope you enjoy the video. Hello everybody, let's do the last video for shops now before we move on. So the last thing I'm going to do is add a category so you can sort by item category. And the logic that I'm going to use in this, you can use in a lot of different things, like any menu that has categories. So what we're going to do is go up here to item category. I'm going to delete the text here because I'm just going to use some icons. And I'm going to create an image in here, UI image, and we'll just say it's going to be 60 by 60. There we go. You should probably use your auto size setters if you want it to scale good with different resolutions, but I'm going to put it in here now just like so because this isn't going to focus too much on the UI. So now I use gameicons.net a lot of times for random icons. It's very, very convenient. I might have showed it earlier in the series, but it's been so long I don't know. But that's where I'm grabbing these images right here, right now. And I'm going to set them to max size of 258, use crunch compression just so it's not taking up a lot of memory on your UI, and also tick alpha is transparency. And I'm forgetting a setting. What is it? I need to also set it up as a sprite, 2D in UI, and a single, and click apply. Now I'm going to drag it in here like so. I'm going to try to go kind of fast here because I want to cover a lot of stuff, so feel free to pause or slow down or go back. I'm going to add an organizer here for the horizontal layer group in a moment. I'm also going to add a button to this. I'm going to make it a prefab. So we've added a button to our image. I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm going to change the second one to an axe. So we'll have one for armor and one for weapons. Now I have my layout group. I'm going to say middle left. Going to not force expand it. I'll instead add some spacing. We'll say 25. I'm also going to add 25 units of spacing from the left, just so it's not actually stuck to the side there. And I'll do it to the right too. So if we're to scale up or down, it should look equal. Now I'm going to duplicate it one more time because I forgot we need to have a category too for every single item. For that, I've got this chest icon, and I've put these brackets here and named it all items, weapons, and equipment. Now, go to your enums. You could use equipment type and modify this to your liking, but I'm just going to make a new one for just the shop category. So I'll say public enum. I'm going to call this shop categories. And I'll just do 3 just to keep it simple because obviously if you do a handful is the same, the logic is going to be identical. You could have 18 or 50, it's still going to work the same way. So we'll do all items, armor, and weapons. That's a pretty good setup. Now I'll come back here to my player UI shop manager, and I'm going to delete this old comment to go. We're not using it. It was just used as an example. I'm going to add a public shop category, and we'll call this item category. And this is going to be what the shop's going to display. Make a header here for my shop. Now I'm going to go back into my prefab and add a UI underscore shop. What am I going to call this? I'll call it shop item category. There we go. I mean, that fits the variable name perfectly. So I'll delete the start and update functionality and drop in my namespace as is per tradition. And I am going to put in these curly brackets here, and I'll add my first variable here. It will be a serializable field. I think I need to make this public later, but we'll see. Shop category, and we'll call this shop category. I'm 100% going off the cuff on this, by the way. So if you find any issues with it or you would do something better, please let me know. This is going to be pretty much written up as I'm thinking about it right now in this video. Obviously, I'll edit it and condense it down so it's much more nicer for you to watch as the viewer. So player UI, let's say set category, and what we're going to do is make this a public variable. If it's not, mine already is. I'm actually going to change this to shop category. I don't know why I called it item category when the variable is called shop category. I'm going to say player UI shop manager dot shop category is equal to the shop category on this script. Okay, cool. We have a way to set it from a function. But now let's make a public void sort shop. And we're going to say by category. And what this is going to do is iterate through every shop item in the shop, or what you're selling. And if it doesn't match the category, it's going to disable them. Or rather, if it matches the category, it will enable them because we're going to begin by disabling every single inventory slot. So for all items, do a for loop here. And we're just going to iterate through our shop inventory, which is the array we have up here. And we can do that by saying shop inventory.length, and obviously check for null if you want to, so you're not going to get an error if something explodes. So we're going to say if shop inventory .current item is equal to null, then simply continue. Well, thinking about it, we're enabling the whole game object, so you don't need to check for a null item, but it's there now. So shop inventory i.gameObject.setActive is equal to true. You should be checking for shop inventory being null, not the current item being null. This is future set, by the way. Okay, so now let's go over to the loop and loop the whole array of items and disable them all, the game objects that is. And now let's go right below and do armor. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if shop inventory I dot current item is armor item. And here you should check for the current item being null because we're checking for the specific type. And then we're going to activate that shop inventory's game object. So basically, if the current item on that object is an armor item, then activate that game object. And we're going to do the same thing for weapons, but obviously check for the weapon item. Now, let's call sort shop by category after we change the category type via this button. We can do that by saying player UI manager.instance.player UI shop manager.sort shop by category. And let's save that. Okay, I'm going to minimize the for loop here and switch state. Now, we have no way of selecting a first button. If you reorganize the shop by the category, obviously any button that was selected is now inactive. So let's make a bool has first inventory selected slot equal to false. And we're going to do a for loop, and we're going to iterate through the shop inventory again, and we're going to check for any active game objects. And if they are active, and we don't have a button selected, the first one we find we're going to select. So if the shop inventory.game object is not active in hierarchy, continue. Otherwise, we're good. We can grab a button. We know all of those slots have a button on them, so we can use a get component here. So we're going to check we don't have a first inventory slot selected. We're going to say now we do. And if you want to, you can make a button local variable on the script itself and reference it directly from shop inventory.I. Up to you. I'm just going to use get component. Now, there is something finicky with Unity, and I'll show you at the end of the video. Don't worry, we have a remedy for it. But sometimes when you call button.select, it doesn't actually activate the selected graphics of the button. So I'll show you what I mean later. We'll come back to that. So now over to UI shop item category. Well, I'm sorry, let's go back to shop manager, because first we need to say serializable field. And then we're going to say UI shop inventory category. And we're going to say shop categories. And this is going to be an array. This is every category you have. So what we want to do is always make sure when you open the menu, it sets to the category of all items. So every time you go back and open a new shop, basically, or open a menu, you want it to default to that. At least I do. If you don't want to, then you can ignore this, but I'm going to make it default to all items whenever you open a shop. So right at the bottom of populate the inventory, what you want to do is do a for loop and go through all of your categories here. Or what you could do, I guess, is do a for loop and go through all of your categories, because thinking about it, I might do this a bit simpler when we get a bit more logic written out, but we'll start with this just to showcase it. So you can just sort through all these categories, and if the category, shop category, let's make this public, if that is equal to all items, then you just want to basically set the category to that. But this implies that you must have an all items category, so if you don't, then don't worry about it, or do something a bit differently, but of course, this is preference for me. Now, a note too while I'm here is if you're iterating through mouse and keyboard setup and a controller setup, like that warrants a whole series, mini series of videos on its own, like 3 or 4. You have to basically allow this button to be pressed. So keep that in mind. You have to set up things a little bit differently. I'm doing this for a controller now, so I'll stick with that. I've made a dynamic system in F where you can switch between controller and mouse, and it kind of auto selects the button for you. I can cover that in the future if you'd like, but that's outside the scope of this video, so we'll keep it simple for now. So I'll make a public variable here for the button. And under set category, I've actually never tried this before, but I think we can get the color from the button. Yeah, okay, so let's use button.colors here. And what we're going to do is make an image. So let's make a serializable field for an image. This is going to be obviously the image sprite of the item category. So think of all items, your helmet, your sword, the thing that will highlight when you select it. But when you select it with right bumper and left bumper on your controller, you're not clicking it, right? You're not selecting the button that way. And I don't want to select the button that way because then it will pull away the selected object to that button when you want it in the inventory. So what we can do is just change the color by saying the image color is equal to the button selected color. So we can say shop categories I.set category, like so. But now we need to reset every other button to the default color. So we have button image.color is equal to button colors.selected color. Okay, that's cool. But now let's loop through every possible category, because again, this assumes you're changing the color of the button, or selecting the button rather, right bumper and left bumper. You don't want to select that button because you want the selected button to be whatever the inventory selected is, because you can only select one thing at a time with the controller. So let's make this public shop categories, and let's iterate through all of them. So whenever you set a new category, iterate through all the shop categories and set their button image as the default color. So we can say shop categories I, if it equals null, continue. Otherwise, we're going to say, let's make this button image public. let's just quickly go below here and say shop categories I dot, and then we can say button image dot color is equal to, and then we're going to say shop categories I button dot, I think it's called default color. Let's see, I dot button dot colors dot normal color. Okay, not default color, normal color. So basically, whenever you're selecting this, you go through all the buttons, set their image to the normal color, and then go basically and set it to the selected color. So this is going to reset every button's color. I'll make it, I guess, more clear. Resets every other button's color, and we'll say selected color. And then we're going to say before selecting. I put it in quotations because, again, you're not actually selecting the button in the traditional sense because we're using a controller here. If you clicked it with a mouse, it would. So make sure you drag in all your categories and shop categories, and make sure your prefabs are up to date and you have all of your variables on there. So the button and the button image, for example, drag that in there like so. And make sure you set the proper shop category on each of your buttons. So my first one is all items, and then if you want to as well, set up your on-click event, go here and shop categories and say set category if you want to be able to click with your mouse. And now this one's going to be armor and this one's going to be weapons. Okay, so I have all those dragged in. Now, populate shop inventory. I want to basically call that every time we set the category. So under the player's inventory as well, go down here and make sure the first one you select is the all items. And I'm saying this in sort by when we populate our shop inventory and populate our player's inventory for sell, make sure you're still setting the category if you want the default to be all items. Now, we need a way to select these buttons using bumpers. So how are we going to go about that? Well, we have an array, right? That's just basically like a series of entries you can have, and that's categorized by ints. It's like 0, 1, 2 is the first entry, the second entry, and the third entry. So let's make a public int, hide it inspector, you don't need to see it, for categories index. Set it to 0 whenever you open the menu right away. That will automatically default to the first entry, which for us is going to be all items. That brings us back to my point before, where now we can say shop categories, bracket, shop category index, like that, which is 0 when you open the menu. We can say set category. And then we can say sort by category. We already say sort by category, I think, don't we? Let me check that in a minute. But regardless, let's do it now by the index instead of doing the for loop. That looks a bit nicer to me. Now, if I go right below here, we're going to make a public void update shop category index. And we're going to say bool raise, and if it's not raise, obviously it's going to be a lower, so we'll say raise index. So we're going to say if raise index, we'll just do index plus equals 1. Otherwise, it will be minus equals 1. So let's just say, copy this here, shop categories index plus equals 1, and shop categories index minus equals 1. Now we got to make sure we don't go outside the bounds, otherwise we'll get an error, so we can quickly check for that. And we also want to make it so some quality of life. If you go beyond the bounds one way, you go to the other end of the list. So what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to say if the shop category index is greater than the shop categories dot length minus 1. So if it's greater than the last entry in the list, you want to reset to 0. At least I think that's cool. You don't have to do that. So what I'm going to do is shop categories equals 0. If you want, you can just make it the last entry in the list. But this makes it so it loops back around, and you can just basically go to the first entry after you pass the last. And do the reverse too. If it's less than 0, then you go to the last entry in the list. If you don't like that, just make it stay at 0, basically. So we could say shop categories.length minus 1. Okay, and I'll add some codes here. If our index passes the maximum, reset it 0. If it's below 0, set it to the last possible category type. And then finally, let's just go down here actually. Where am I going? Go to where we have set categories and paste that, and delete sort by shop category after that call, because I'm just remembering now. Let me just double check. Yeah, we call it in here under our UI shop category. See, this is the downside of not having things pre-planned out, but that's okay. This is a more realistic process. Okay, back in the inspector, let's go over to our player UI manager prefab, and let's go to our little categories here. I'm just going to make sure I got all the variables in place and everything looks good. Everything's in the menu. All right, so right below here now, just going to double check all these as well, the variables in for the button and the image. Now, if we go over to one of our other menus, which one has it? Probably the teleport location manager. Okay, that's definitely not supposed to be there. Player UI, equipment manager, input manager. Do you see this? So we're going to make one of these input managers here for the shop manager. And we're going to put it on the menu object so that it's not always running, because we're going to utilize an update call. And basically the menu object obviously is disabled when we're not in this menu. So it will only be active whenever you have this menu open. So I'm going to call it player UI shop manager, input manager. And I am going to delete the start and update functionality as is per tradition. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go to my player UI equipment input manager and yoink everything off of this. And we're just going to edit it as we need, because we can keep the on enable, on disable, on awake, our update call, and the call for player control. So basically we're just going to change what happens and what script we're making edits on. So the player UI equipment manager instead becomes the player UI shop manager, and change the type down here on awake as well. And then just change the variable name, obviously. Now, we have one input here already, but we're using X, I believe that's to unequip item. So let's change that to RB for right bumper, and we'll change the name from unequip item input. Yes, it was unequip item. I guess I just should have read it. We'll change that to move shop category up, as in we're going to increment the index up. Now, we're going to need move shop category down as well. So make that local variable and copy and paste the player actions performed, changed right bumper to left bumper, and change move shop category up to move shop category down. Now we have a nice if move shop category up. All we need to do is call our function. Let's also make one for if move shop category down. If we're moving it down, make sure you disable the flag immediately so it only calls once in that frame. And then we're going to also call on both of these. What did we call that again? Update shop category index. It's true if you're moving it up, so we'll put true here. And we copy and paste it down here, and since it's down, we're going to say false. Okay, I think we're almost done. Let's go ahead now and rename this from handle player UI equipment manager inputs to handle player UI shop manager inputs. And we are good. Let's save that. Back in our player UI prefab, I'm going to go to the player UI shop manager, and I'm going to make a public text mesh pro UGUI variable for the shop title. Forgot to do this last time. Basically, I want to change the name if you're buying or selling. So let's just look where we reference this. Okay, so referencing on an open buy and open sell menu, and everywhere else it's not really important. So we're only going to need to call this in one place for each title. On open buy menu, we're going to say shop title. Is that what I just called it? Yeah, shop title.text is equal to, I'm going to say, I believe it's purchase item is what I used defaultly before. So we'll say purchase item. Likewise, if you open the sell menu, we're going to say shop title text is equal to sell item. And that's it. Let's make sure we have our variable dragged in though, because we just made that. So go back in the player UI, drag in your title text, and let's just disable the menu and see what's up. Okay, so if I go to my player input manager, I forgot something right away. We have this code here probably from years ago, maybe. If we have a UI window open, return it nothing. This is on handle right bumper input. We can finally do this. If a menu window is open, simply return. Otherwise, you're going to be slashing the shopkeeper when you try to change the category. Do the same thing for left bumper as well, and we're good to go. Go back into the game. I didn't set my prefab's item type selected color, so I can't tell when it's selected. So I'm going to change that to red. Now, if I go into the world here and talk to the shopkeeper, and then I go to buy item, boom. You can see here, though, we have two buttons selected at the same time, so we're going to fix that. But yes, we can go through the categories, and they do, in fact, change. But let's make sure that all those buttons aren't staying selected like that, because that just looks strange. So if I go to sell though, let's make sure it's working too, and yes it is working, but you can see there two buttons are being selected at once, so let's remedy that real quick. This is going to be a pretty easy fix. All we want to do is iterate through all of the items, so right under sort shop by category, do an iteration through every inventory slot, and make sure you're calling the deselect call on the shop inventory icon itself. That will disable the highlighted image. So deselect any button, so we can say shop inventory I, and then we're going to say dot deselect slot, and just erase this part of the if statement here. Obviously, of course, this doesn't need to be here. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to show you the potential problem I was talking about. So I've got a thing down here now where we're going to select the button that it first finds. You can see here it's selecting it. First, we're iterating through and we're selecting the first button. Let's delete this from the inventory for creating it for our player in our shop, because we're going to do it on set category anyway. So you can see here down here it is on set category. So we're getting this first. Watch what happens when I go through the inventory. You can see the button's on highlighting, but when I press right on the D-pad, watch this. You can still see I can go over to the bow item. So the button is being selected, but the highlight icon is not actually enabling. So what I'm going to do is just say shop inventory.i.select slot. We have this function ourselves, and that actually enables our highlight image. And now if I go in here, it's working as intended. No idea why it's doing that, because that's being called on the function. So if one of you guys in the comments has an answer and would love to enlighten me, that would be awesome. But regardless, this works fine. Everything is as intended. You can see here I'm cycling through all the categories. The categories load as they were. All items load all items, and the armor loads armor, and the weapons load the weapons. So if you guys enjoyed that, please leave a like and comment. It does actually genuinely help with the series so much, you have no idea. Just that little second makes the world of difference. I sound like a broken record, but I really mean it. I shout out to my patrons. It is because of you guys the series can continue at all, so you have my sincerest gratitude. Thank you again to all the people who take the time to like and share the series via word of mouth and who support my channel and my work in any way. You guys are awesome. I hope you learned something new, and I hope you have a very lovely weekend. I'll see you next week when we move on to a new topic.